Welcome to Mission 1, The Executive Edge.
Today, we're sharing a compilation that zeroes in on one of the most challenging arenas in business, the climb to the C-suite.
Executive hiring demands clear thinking, strong instincts, and a compelling story.
And whether you're guiding a search to hire someone or preparing to make that leap yourself, you'll hear the strategies that consistently set leaders apart.
Throughout this episode, we've gathered our most impactful conversations and insights from the year,
highlighting everything from the way roles should be shaped to how candidates can frame their entire career narrative. Let's get into it, shall we?
When I think about kicking off a search, I like to think about, okay, what is the problem that you're solving for? My observation is, the more I work with people, is people, what is obvious to one party might not be, or might be supremely opaque to another party. And therefore, trying to look at the Rubik's Cube in different ways to solve it, try and really understand the sort of the why of why we're doing this and really dig deep is a good place to start. We talk a lot about articulation of this as well, and clear articulation and communication. So I think it's about getting the relevant stakeholders together and thinking and really probing again and again, okay, what are the fundamental things we are trying to solve for in this role?
I absolutely agree, right? It's first and foremost, what are you solving for, right? If you were hiring for your team or building a team, it's an opportunity to think about, for this role and from a first principle standpoint. If you're replacing somebody, it's an opportunity to think about, does the shape of the role change? Clear articulation of that. I think it's also an opportunity to step back and think about, kind of reflect on, your team, what you can offer, the company as a whole. Ultimately, it's thinking about everything and putting it all together, thinking about the role. And, if it's replacing somebody, is this a different person than we had before? Is this, different experience, different skill gap? Or is this essentially hiring this, exactly what you need? But just an opportunity to think about everything and take a step back.
I think that's right. So that ability to strategize, I suppose, that ability to talk about, to step back and think, I think is critical. There can be a bit of mission creep, right? In terms of, you get a load of people together and they start throwing in everything, right? Like, what do we need? I suppose the danger of that is all the sort of warning, and all our advice comes with a warning, I think, because you can take it too far or be naive in its application.
Absolutely. Everyone's hoping to get the world-class person who has done this job successfully time and again. I can come in and replicate that, but that may not be interesting to that person today, right? So you're thinking about, what you need, and also what kind of person you can get who is, this role will be compelling to. Alignment is incredibly important for that the candidate experience, to be great. Please, absolutely do not have subordinates interviewing their potential boss. Or giving them veto power. It's good to include them maybe at the end of the process, but do not give them, a veto power, in my opinion, because that will throw things off, and they may have their own ambitions of assuming the role themselves, and you lose great candidates.
One piece we often give to clients is that we say, if you're going to have any stakeholder you're a bit worried about their opinions, sit in that meeting yourself. Because it's very hard to row back. If somebody says feedback, they're complete culture mismatch, right? And that's their feedback. It's very hard to go against that feedback. Moving to the candidate side, let's look at the core philosophy of growth. Our second segment features Stillfront Group CEO Alexis Bonte and New York Times Head of Games Jonathan Knight. We explore the entrepreneurial mindset and look at why embracing discomfort is crucial for accelerated career growth.
I think everyone's an entrepreneur, whether you're not an entrepreneur, because you are an entrepreneur of your own career. So when you're doing your own career, you need to take those risks. You need to take those chances, because that's the only way you can grow. You need to get out of your comfort zone. Actually, that's where you have the least career opportunities. Where the most career opportunities, either a rocket ship that's very hard to join, or you join a company that is either in the middle of a turnaround or has problems on that, because very likely what's going to happen in that kind of company that has problems, if you believe in it, if you believe in the management and the people out there, is a lot of people are going to leave and things are going to break and all that. And that's going to be opportunity for you to, A, show what you can do, do more things than what you would be expected to be doing. And that's going to allow you to really grow as a professional.
I'm being paid an extraordinary amount of money. I work with lots of smart people, but it's hard to get anything done. And also there's no sense of impetus or drive from other people. Like that becomes systemic and they actually start feeling a bit frustrated or then they suddenly get cut, right? Like, again, that's the other thing is like security and, things look secure, but who knows in 2 years' time, right? Like it can be very arbitrary, even in the safest job.
Be very careful of the golden cage. I think it's really important to 100% understand what makes your company make money. I have this thing is kind of follow the money. Whatever position you're in is the position that is driving or generating the money today or driving or generating the money tomorrow. That's what you want to be doing.
I had a reputation throughout that period and even to today as a real doer. I mean, if I'm really honest, like my superpower is probably just that, I push through and get things done and make them happen. And I build things and ship them. And often they're successful, not always. But I think it was hard in that period to find people who, were really driven, could make things happen, knew how to pull a team together, build a team, lead a team, execute, build great software, which is hard to do.
Next, we dive into the candidate's core toolkit. This segment focuses on why merely being qualified isn't enough. You need to quantify your results, frame your historical context strategically, and use deep thinking questions to differentiate yourself. First and foremost, know, your interviewer, right? Kind of know the role you're going in for, but know who is interviewing you and, think about what questions they may ask you from their perspective.
I think honing in on that is so helpful for the flavoring of your stories. This is our key KPI. Even if you can't share the exact details because it might be confidential, sometimes you can give a range.
Sometimes growth is, domain specific or lack of growth is domain specific. Generally, the interviewer is going to be aware of that anyway, right? So it's nothing to be, worried about, too much as long as you can give the context on the broader domain, the broader sector and what happened.
I think the words you used there was context. If you don't give the context of that metric, it can be less or it can be negatively interpreted versus actually it could be a positive attribute or a positive achievement. So being able to say, we're aware our competitors dropped by 20% year on year. We declined by 3%. So while obviously we would love to have grown, you can see against a really tough market, we were leading. And that's actually positioned us really well to actually gain market share over the long term. The thing that you can definitely come back on is asking the right kind of questions. We've had a few processes. We've seen candidates where the interviewer say it was okay, but then when they asked questions, they were asking all the right questions. And that meant I want to spend more time with them because that's the bit that sort of started to fire up. And that can really become very persuasive against other candidates who might just have more generic questions about the role or what's going on there. So it's another sort of area to differentiate. Is there anything about your hiring approach or the question you're asking that's changed over time from experience?
The biggest shift that I probably made was to focus less on what they've done and more on what they will do. I think if earlier in my career, I probably was just going like, oh, tell me about your time there. What did you do? Like, tell me about your time there. What did you do? Oh, they've done a bunch of great stuff. Like, we should hire them. And I think that was a big shift for me.
Moving on, let's discuss the fundamental shift required to ascend the career ladder, the Ascent. This segment explores why continuous networking matters, even when you're not looking, the need for a coherent career narrative, and the power of demonstrating highly collaborative leadership. Qualities essential for any executive role.
The hallmark of a great VP is, someone with a great track record of team development, getting subordinates promoted, with a network ready to follow them to their next role. For example, if you're hiring a VP of sales, one question you may want to ask them is, do you have people that can follow you, to the role immediately? And if they can name one or two people, that's a fantastic answer. And if they can't, they may not be ready, for the role themselves because, building the network and having a track record development is, incredibly important.
Our experience is often people are quite heads down if they're in executive roles currently, they're focused on the job in hand, and sometimes they're coming to the job search a little bit sort of rusty on their network, or haven't really thought through. Or I've never had to look for a job before. In 20 years, I've always had promotions, internal or whatever it is, and suddenly they're coming to the markets. I think you build up that network and you keep it warm, regardless of role, and that's actually the best time, is to really just have those honest conversations. I think there can be a hesitancy if somebody's feeling like they're getting approached by someone who's actively looking for a job. Powerful line can be, I'd love to get your advice on the market. I'm super happy where I am. However, the next 6 to 12 months, I feel like I'm coming to the end of my project. I feel like I'm ready for a new challenge. So I just really want to understand, what does the market look like? What are you hearing from the market? What are you seeing as the kind of challenges in your org where you think, wow, I'd really love someone to come in and solve these problems, or that's the direction of travel.
We do have an active network that we can help them and get connected to, especially if they're actively looking today. Or sometimes it's just, hey, we want to build our network with investors, and build our network, right? And so it's just make it easy for us to help you get connected, right, as a candidate. You may be successful doing this other thing that is not a straightforward path to the direction you're going. But if you're not, that could hurt you. But even if you are, that may prevent you from getting, back on track.
That's the story of the career, right? And I think that just is a theme we keep coming up, is what's the narrative? What's the story? And if it's not easy for somebody else to understand, if it requires a lot of articulation, the more you've got to articulate it, right, the more risk or doubt is going to creep into the mind of someone who's looking at your profile or a resume. And I think that's a really good point, that if you are pivoting around different functions, just be aware that might come at the cost of a harder to understand CV, which at some point might catch up to you. The very top executives are highly collaborative people, might not surprise you. Majority of them are, and very good at sort of, getting a lot of buy-in from other people, particularly if they change roles. If you're searching for executive roles externally, having that personal brand in terms of just the referencing and who are the great examples and people you can show you developed, and or peers who've really, we would say, the most wonderful things about you is really important.
Next up, the strategic job search. Getting the top job requires surgical precision. We outline how to conduct advanced market research by following the money, tracking VC and PE trends, and how to strategically interact with and vet executive recruiters by understanding the difference between contingent and retained search models.
Researching the sector, researching the company that you're looking at is the tip there, I suppose.
You typically will have, at least some idea of the best companies, the best performing companies, where all the best talent's going, or where, what companies are working on, maybe the challenges you'd want to be working on, or working on technology you'd want to work with as well, right? So, have some kind of, general idea.
So you can look at funds that are investing in, whether that's earlier stage, it could be seed VC type funds, venture capital type funds, follow what they're doing. If it's later stage, it could be private equity. You can find those things by, I think, keeping close to some of the newsletters and podcasts, trying to find out which way the wind is blowing in whatever sector you're in ahead of time, because it might be that there's a whole new category out there that's really ready to go.
Just because something looks shiny on paper doesn't mean it's the right fit for your needs and your company today. So think about what you're solving for. Go back to step one. What are we solving for? What's the shape of the role? And then build your scorecard based off of that.
And I probably just want to say to them, again, the sort of the practical, clear-eyed advice is companies can often be very risk adverse in their hiring. They want candidates who have solved the challenges that they're facing in front of them in some way or form. And if it's sort of building something from the ground up with no brand, that's what they want.
Timing of the market is important to understand, and not necessarily a reflection of a company's desire to hire you, which is potentially not an open role. I think there's far fewer roles at the executive level, right? So giving yourself enough time, to find those roles. It takes, in a good market, 6 months to find a role.
Understanding who are specialists in your areas versus the people who might say they're specialists or say they cover it. We see people getting fatigued by contact with headhunters just because they talk to a lot of generalists who don't really understand their particular area. And that can lead to them getting turned off. And you can see people enjoy they really enjoy it when they think they're talking to someone who really understands their area and has the context and starts mentioning people in common, or they say, I used to work here, and you say, I used to work with, Joe or Fred or Shanine or whatever it is, right? And they say, oh, you know that person, right? And you think you can see that is a more pleasant experience for the executive. So going around and understanding, okay, who's got a good reputation in my market and who's been working with the right kind of companies that I want to go work with.
Contingent is, those are recruiters that are, they essentially get paid on the success of the hire. So they have to move with speed and velocity. Sometimes the company has engaged multiple contingent recruiters. So there's not a lot of time to be savvy in their approach to you or to represent you appropriately as well.
Continuing with Alexis, he shares his personal 80-20 rule for leadership. This segment addresses why many top executives become isolated and how a CEO must actively design their role to deliver maximum strategic value rather than maximum isolation.
I see a lot of public company CEOs who only do that basically, and they completely lose touch with the product, with the team, with what really happens, and they're in that kind of ivory tower where it doesn't work. So me, I try to keep the balance, which is 80% being with the team, being with the product, visiting the studios, understand what's happening, all that, and 20%, the more kind of public company CEO. And basically, I think what you do is you design your CEO role in a way that drives the most value for the company at that point. Whenever someone comes to me, the thing I love the most is when I have someone that comes to me and says, Alexis, I know you want me to work on this, but actually, here's why I think this is not so important, or this other person would be better qualified to do this. And this is where I think what you're missing. And this is where I think I really need to focus and work on. I love that. When that happens, that's really good stuff. A company is a sports team. You put the best players on the field and you put them in the right positions. And if one of them is injured, you remove them, you get them off the field, you get them to rest and sit down, and you replace them with someone else. That's how you run a company. That's how you win.
They're often within areas that can be learned and absorbed, right? And practiced and mentored into. And I think certainly sort of just a perspective from myself on this sort of what does it take for a C-suite or to get to the C-suite, I'd start by saying, all the attributes of what we need, whether it's leadership, whether it's strategic vision, whether it is high level of communication skills, which are all part of what we see in C-level executives, they're all learnable skills.
We conclude with the last stage of hiring, the final instinct. This segment focuses on how to manage delicate offer conversations, the importance of absolute transparency, and why ultimately the best hiring decisions come down to gut feeling and trusting future potential over past credentials.
I probably focus less on what people have done and more try to get through the process a sense of what they're going to do. I think it's much more important to lay out. So, okay, you get this job. What are you going to do? What's your vision for, and why do you even want this job? And how are you going to attack it if you get it? Sometimes that's creating actual scenarios or tests for people, or having them build out a presentation. It depends on the role.
How do you sniff that out? Because everyone's going to say, I like teamwork, or, I collaborate well. I'd hope most people are saying they like collaborating with others. So how do you sniff that out? And what was your instincts, Day?
Well, you either get them to tell you about a time when they were, faced with difficult decisions around driving their own agenda versus collaborating with others, or again, you paint a scenario for the future. How would you approach that? I think successful when I hired people who made me a little uncomfortable in some of those answers, that maybe the things that they want to do were sort of challenging to the vision I had, or people who I felt like, oh man, like I'm probably going to learn from that person. They're bringing something to the table that I don't have or I haven't thought of. So I think you want to look for that, but also make sure that it's going to be, in in the vision.
I think would be, are you, from a company fit standpoint, are they a culture fit? Do they make decisions that align philosophically with you? Not to say they have to be perfect on that, because sometimes you want diversity of thought as well, and that's great to have too. But could you see yourself? Easy test here is, could you see yourself enjoying your time with them in an airport? If you got stuck, if your flight was delayed for 3 to 5 hours, could you go and have 3 to 5 hours with this person and enjoy that? Right. And if not, then they're, that's probably not going to enjoy working with them. And if so, then, that they're probably, a strong culture fit, and hopefully they match functionally as well.
Well, I mean, I think in the end, I still believe in, going with instinct at the end of a hiring process, or, it came down to two, ideal candidates, and you're sort of talking to your recruiting team, and they're looking at you going like, hey, you can't go wrong here. Like, they're both great. And how do you pick, how do you make that final decision? And I think, at the end of the day, you still want to process all the data you've gotten, and then take a deep breath and try to visualize the future of that person, coming into the organization, and what are they going to do, and how's that going to all work, and make a judgment call and make it. And there's still room for, I think, instinct and kind of going with your gut in this endeavor. If you've done all the homework and you've got a great process, then I think that piece is still really valid and critical.
We hope this episode helped illuminate just how multi-layered the executive hiring process really is for both candidates and decision makers.
Rising to the C-suite requires a shift in approach, elevating your story, sharpening your strategic perspective, and learning to recognize potential in a whole new way.
There's much more to uncover.
So check out the full episodes of Mission 1, The Executive Edge, for deeper insights.
Thanks for joining us today. Until next time. That's another episode of Mission 1, The Executive Edge. If you found this valuable, hit subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other professionals discover the show.
Have a question about executive hiring or want to share your own experience? Reach out on LinkedIn or visit mission1.io/podcast. We read everything, and your stories often inspire future episodes.
The Executive Edge is brought to you by Mission 1, where we specialize in placing senior leaders at tech, entertainment, and AI companies. Learn more at mission1.io.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you again soon on The Executive Edge.